So today I'm basically going to be talking about a little bit kind of behind the scenes of what you don't see while you're going through your job search. So this is giving you an insight as to how recruitment works and a little bit about kind of what tips and advice I can give you throughout your job search. So the first slide is just a little bit about me. So I was a recruiter at Swift. Unfortunately, there were some layoffs, so I am now a job seeker, like some of you. So I'm going through all of this with you as well. So essentially, I got into recruitment because of previous bad experiences, and kind of I'm a very peoply person, and I thought this is kind of something that I enjoy doing. I like helping people, and giving them the pigeon, giving them whatever advice I can, and just basically helping out. So some interesting things about me, I guess. One of my favourite game series is Final Fantasy. I think I had to kind of think about which one was my favourite, and I think Final Fantasy X is, the one, the winner. At the minute, I'm obsessed with playing main stage on Fortnite. I don't know if anyone's been playing it, but that kind of scratches that itch of the old kind of like dancing stage. Yeah, Fortnite Festival. That's really fun. I'm enjoying that. So outside of kind of recruitment and gaming, my hobbies, I love birds. I'm really obsessed with it. I'm lucky to have a nice little garden where I get the birds come and visit regularly. So yeah, it's quite nice. Nathan asks what my favourite bird is. Good question. I think the winner is always going to be the wood pigeon. Like, I think they've got fantastic personalities. As weird as that sounds, but yeah, I think the pigeons are always the funniest to kind of watch. So move on from there. So just a little bit about kind of recruitment. I'm sure, as some of you are aware, kind of it's a bit of a crazy back when I was originally job seeking, 5+ years ago. There's been a lot of introduction to new systems and how recruitment works. Obviously, businesses are changing, there's been layoffs and stuff like that. So it's good to kind of have an understanding of how that's changed. The internet basically describes recruitment as a process of finding, screening, hiring, and onboarding qualified job candidates. So within recruitment, this can vary. Not every recruiter will go through the entire process of that. So I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of how. Oh, sorry, someone just says audio is going in and out for me. A sec. Oh, is it okay now? So yeah, I'll be kind of talking through what types of recruiters there are around to be aware of, and what their kind of job responsibilities are, and how that will affect you in your job search. Because I think the thing for me before I got into recruitment, I you just kind of see it as a front facing thing. You that someone's doing some kind of work in the background, but I didn't know what it was. So hopefully this can help explain it. So some of the common job titles in recruitment that you will have probably seen or already be aware of. So HR manager might be a common one. Obviously, if it's got recruitment in the title, that's a dead giveaway. So other things are talent acquisition, head of recruitment, resourcer or sourcer as well. So they all play a part in the kind of journey of your application outside of that. So we'll talk a little bit about decision makers. So this is one of the things that I would say to keep an eye out for is the different types of job roles, the people who are working in that area. So although a recruiter is someone that you may sometimes think makes the decisions, they don't always do that. So it all depends on the studio size and who's working in there and if they've got a recruitment team. But just as an example, if you're applying for a junior designer role, the decision maker most likely will be the person who's going to be overseeing you, so that may be the head of design or the lead designer. Now, whilst they may be making the decision at the end of it, they might not always be the first person to see your CV. So it's always good to just kind of connect with other people with different job titles within that company. So hopefully that kind of clears up the people involved in it. If not, please message it right in and I'll answer your questions. So we'll go through internal and external otherwise known as agency. So these are the two types of recruiters to be aware of while you're in your job search. So me personally, I worked at Ardvox Recruitment, which is a recruitment agency. So essentially we work externally for game studios, and internally, if you're looking at an internal recruiter, they work directly within the studio. So what was that? So internal recruiters will essentially be usually involved from your first interview all the way up to potentially onboarding you into the job. An agency will just kind of be there usually at the start of it. They won't have any interviews with you personally. They might pre-screen you, so ask you questions and tell you a little bit about the job beforehand, and they'll kind of keep in touch with you throughout the process. So yeah, just a little bit about the internal process of how it works. So the recruiter will work with hiring managers or senior team members to understand what the studio needs are. So that differs again depending on size of the studio. So if it's a small team, they might only be hiring one or two positions every so often. Or if you're working with big companies like, for instance, Keywords, where they make a lot of hires over the course of 6 to 12 months. So the internal recruiter will screen and interview you, but as I mentioned previously, they don't always go through the entire process. So they may not have the capability to make big decisions as to whether or not you're going through, but they'll at least get the information to the hiring manager or the decision maker. So about how agencies work, they will work with the studio, usually with a recruiter there or with the HR, and usually external recruiters will work with the studio when they don't have the capacity internally to find candidates or don't have the time to source through and screen everybody. So the agency recruiters, as I mentioned, they'll have the screening call with you about the role, but won't be part of any further interviews for you. So the good thing about the agency screening is that they'll be able to help you understand the role a little bit better and be able to kind of get your details direct to the hiring manager or a person who's making the decision. So we'll talk about when you should directly apply. So direct application is the usual thing that we do while we're on a job search. But things to kind of make sure before you do apply directly is to make sure you've got all the information that you need about the job role, and to be certain that your CV and your cover letter really hits the mark in terms of what they're looking for. Also, it's really great if you've got a connection with the studio, or you maybe have a referral. That's a really good time to kind of go direct on a job application. And also, if you don't know any recruiters supporting the studio, then I would suggest to go ahead and apply directly. So, agency. Has anybody ever used a recruitment agency before at all? Okay, right. So, when to use an agency, so what I would recommend is, if you're especially in kind of early stages, this may be your first job, or you're kind of struggling to find any job roles on the internet, I would definitely suggest to reach out to a recruiter at an agency. The reason being is because they can spare a little bit more time to give you some advice on your job search. They, can talk to you a little bit more in depth about the company and anything that they know that an internal recruiter might not be able to talk to you about. The other thing as well, I think, is beneficial for using an agency is when, if you are working full time and you don't have, or lots of hours to spend job searching, it'll just kind of help supplement what you're doing on the side. It means that if you might miss a job role that's on the internet, but they'll be able to give you a call or drop you a message and say, look, we've got this in, let's have a chat about it. And also, recruitment agencies, especially in games, are really useful if you're looking for something specific. It's whether it's narrative design, any programming roles, things like that. That's a perfect reason to go and use an agency then. So another thing I wanted to mention today is, you might have seen it, you might have not seen it, is about ATS systems and the use of AI. So this is talking more about what a recruiter does in the process, and this is kind of something that is good to kind of know about and understand what is happening with your application. So not every studio will use one, but an ATS is basically short for applicant tracking system. So this makes it easier, essentially, for the studio and the recruitment team to be able to track where you are as a candidate within the process. It's really good for. It's kind of similar to like project management type things, where they'll be able to see what date you applied. They might be able to see how long you've been waiting from an interview, if you've had feedback and things like that. So one of the things that the ATS will do is, well, sometimes does, is it will have AI within it that will suggest candidates that match a criteria. So it will use it. It's essentially also a database for recruiters to be able to see applicants a little bit quicker. So the reason why I tell you this is because a lot of your applications that you'll do online will be used through an applicant tracking system. So one way to kind of figure it out, it usually is quite open in saying that it is. So it might say powered by Greenhouse or powered by Team Taylor and things like that. So that's one way to know that a recruiter will get your CV, but also they'll get the application kind of separate as well, and the system will kind of drag you in if you are a match, if that makes sense to anyone. Has anyone got any questions on ATS systems or the use of AI within it at all? That's fine, we can talk about that later on. So again, as I mentioned, you most likely will be applying via an applicant tracking system. There's a lot of information on the internet that I've seen, especially on LinkedIn quite recently, about the use of AI within these, and how sometimes the autofill doesn't generate properly and things like that when you're submitting your CV. So there's other options kind of around it if you are unsure. Again, this is where I would suggest maybe speak to a recruiter to see if they can get, apply for you directly. If a recruiter applies for you, it will still go into the tracking system, but the internal recruiter will most likely be able to look at the CV that an external recruiter has brought in before the rest of the applications. This is just because they know that you will have had a pre-screening call, and they'll be able to put in more information than you might be able to put in through the system itself. So the other thing I'll mention as well is to have a Word document of your CV and a PDF document. Try to minimalise kind of any formatting if possible, if you are putting it through an app tracking system, just because then it makes sure that if you are using any autofill systems, it makes sure that all your key skills are kind of pulled through and all the information that they need to know is on there. So some things to take into consideration. Applying directly is always going to be I say always, I've seen some application processes that have taken me like 30 minutes plus to do but it's usually this simple option. But I would always recommend to speak with an agency or external recruiter to see if they can offer you any tips or insights into the studio or into the job role. And I would also say, obviously, just focus your efforts on researching as much as you can before you go and apply. It's very easy for us to just jump at a job that we see, and kind of we can miss out some key information sometimes. So just take your time when you're going through the process, essentially. But if a recruiter does reach out to you directly, and that's internal or external, it's usually a good sign. So obviously I would still do your research into who they are, just make sure they are genuine and from a legitimate company. And yeah, that's usually a good sign. It means that you're matching one of the jobs vacancies that they have. So in terms of kind of some things to look out for, there definitely are things to look out for, and these are some of the things that I would advise to keep an eye out for. So CV harvesting is becoming quite a thing, I've noticed on the internet. It may just be because of how the industry is at the moment, and companies and studios are maybe wanting to just get in as many profiles as they can. But what I would say is, if they don't have a job vacancy at that time but they want your CV, I would try and avoid it. And the reason being is because you might put your profile onto their system, but they might not have a job for months and months, so it's kind of a waste of efforts, really. What you want to be doing is making sure that your CV is getting put forward for an active vacancy. and so that you're keeping everything up to date as well, because the last thing that you want is an outdated CV to be on someone's system, and basically you get missed out for opportunities. Excuse me. So external or agencies recruiters might want to share your profile with a studio. The reason that they do this is when they might not have a vacancy with that studio, but they know that you're a good fit for a role with them. So what they'll do is send over a profile to the hiring manager or the recruiter, and sometimes there's quite a lot of success off the back of that. So what I would do is, if you are considering letting a recruiter share your profile with the studio, just make sure you ask them to send you over kind of like a draft profile description of what they are going to send. But usually this only happens kind of when you have lots of experience, and it's usually kind of senior roles and leadership roles that they tend to do this, unless you can show that you've got some really, really good skills at early stages. Some people might want to send your profile over for those kind of junior or graduate roles. Another thing I've actually seen, which I'm quite shocked by, is people offering jobs before you've had a call. Now, I'm not sure if this has happened to anyone or if anyone has seen this, but definitely don't accept any jobs if you haven't had an interview or a call with anyone. That's a big red flag for me. And also be careful of kind of third-party sites. So what I have seen around is, I think some companies use AI to kind of drag in job listings, but what that does is you'll click on apply, it'll take you to another website, but then it'll ask you to click apply there and things like that. So just be careful of where you are applying. You want to just apply on a website if you can, and just check that the vacancy is still active. So again, it's just about doing your research, and if you are unsure, see if you can contact someone directly in the studio about that job role. So some green flags. A good recruiter, if you're speaking to them, will basically be your cheerleader. They are going to support you from the start and offer you as much advice as they can. Essentially, an external recruiter, it is in their best interest to get you a job. Some of them don't get paid unless they basically put you in a job. So for them, it is in their best advice to kind of give it their all and help you as much as they can. Also internally, they might not be able to always give you that advice, so always try and speak to an external or agency recruiter if you can, just if you do need that extra support. Also, a good agency recruiter will have really good relationships with the studios, with HR and hiring managers. So that's one thing. If you can ask them that question, who are you working with and how long have you been working with them, that'll give you a good indication basically as to whether or not you should continue working with that agency recruiter. So my advice on, particularly recruitment agencies, is just check, do a bit of background research on them. Do they have good reviews on the internet? Do you know someone who might have spoken with them? Come prepared again with plenty of questions. So ask them kind of who they've placed, what sort of thing, what sort of studios they've worked with. Just find out about them basically. If you don't want them to represent you, if you don't want them to have your details, you can say no. This is the biggest thing that I would say, is just be kind of careful, cautious about how many recruiters you speak to. You want to limit it as much as possible. But if you're not confident in them kind of helping support you, and if you're not confident in where they're sending your CV to, just say no. You can do that. That's no issue at all. There's also no right or wrong way to apply in your job search. Just always go with your gut feeling, but again, just kind of practice researching around it.